Hello, my friends, and welcome back. So, something's been on my mind and my heart the last couple weeks. Specifically, I keep seeing Facebook posts on several homeschooling Facebook pages of moms saying, this curriculum isn't working or this thing isn't working, and I don't know what to do. And I've spent all this money on this curriculum, and I think I'm going to put my kids back in public school because my kids are being frustrating and blah, 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 all these things. And And I keep seeing the same types of posts again and again and again. But the solution that these moms don't and these dads don't come up with is, oh, why don't you change curriculums? Why don't you take a break from that subject for a while? Why don't you slow things down? Oh, they're doing an hour a day of it. Maybe 15 minutes would be sufficient. And that's what I want to talk to you today about is when homeschooling isn't working, what can you do to change? And when is it appropriate to make changes? So I think so that's what I want to discuss today. I don't think so. I think this is an important thing to discuss because there are times that things don't work or things worked for a while and now they don't. And so how do we change things up? What do we need to do so that it is working again? So let's talk about my family for a minute. I have, for those of you that are new listeners, I have 6 children. I have 2 adult children and then 4 at home that we started homeschooling 3.5 years ago in 2020. One of them is actually, one just turned 17, one just turned 16. I've got an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old. And for my 11-year-old, I've had some concerns the last few weeks because I've had a lot on my plate with not just homeschooling, but other things that are in my life that I have to take care of. And I've observed that my 11-year-old has been getting on Minecraft and video games earlier and earlier in the day and playing later and later. And it's become a concern for me. And we will be talking about technology in the future because I want to bring on some specialists to talk about that and not just talk about it myself. But and the thing with this particular child is, number one, he doesn't lie to me. Like, this is a kid who does not lie. Now I've had kids. One of my older kids lied all the time, right? That was, and he'd sneak onto video games, and we had all sorts of, mama issues and what do we do about this and that and the other with one of my older kids. But this particular child is my second to the youngest, and he doesn't lie. And if I ask him to do something, he will do it. He's very obedient as far as that goes. And I don't ask a ton of him as far as, he's got his chores that he's expected to do. He's got his work each morning that he's expected to do. And lately he's been rushing through everything and wanting to spend more and more time on technology. And he hasn't wanted to animate as much as he did. And so it's been on my mind and my heart, and I've been praying a lot about it. Like, what do I do with this kid? Because right now, doing the minimum is not working. It's not working. And so I had a heart-to-heart with him about the technology issue and the desire to play video games all the time. And we had a little heart-to-heart, and I asked him, I'm like, how are you feeling about video games? And I said, I feel like there's a little bit of an addiction going on. And he said, yes, there is. And so I started thinking, okay, I need to be better about enforcing the time that he's on Minecraft and on the video games, which, man, with my older 2 kids, I ended up getting rid of the video games altogether. And then with my younger kids, we didn't have them for a long time. And then my very ambitious, now 17-year-old, when he was like 13 or 14, saved up, wanted to get a Switch. I let him get it. That was a regret. That's a regret that I have, is letting him get that. But I did. And he doesn't even play it that much, but his siblings do, namely the 11-year-old. So I talked to him and I had this heart-to-heart with him. And I was like, buddy, I feel like it's an addiction and I'm concerned about you. And he said, it is. And I want to play it all the time. And I said, how do you feel after you play the video games. And part of it's my fault because I need to be better at enforcing as a mom and being like, hey, it's time to do something else. But as I've been busy, and maybe this is an excuse, but it's something that I'm having to repent of and do better as a mom, because we all have the stuff. No one's perfect. No homeschooling mom is perfect. I've yet to meet one who doesn't have challenges. I'm no different. And so I've got to be better about monitoring that with him. But he told me, he said, Mom, I feel not great after I've played for a long time. And I said, okay, then we're going to start setting up boundaries. Would that be helpful to you? And he said, yes, it would. Now, again, this is a child that's very I have a really close relationship with him. So does my husband. So if we ask him to do something, he'll do it. Again, I've had other kids. It didn't matter what I asked them to do. They wouldn't have done it, right? Like they'd do the opposite. They'd sneak on video games. Yeah. I've had that too. So I don't want you to think like, oh, she doesn't know. No, I do. Like, again, I've been around the block a few times and I've had some hard kids. One of my older kids was really a tough kid. Great kid. He's a great adult, but he was a tough kid. And man, public schooling was hard, but it was a respite for me, quite frankly. Anyway, back to my 11-year-old. So we started, I tried to set up some boundaries and whatnot. And I've been thinking and praying about him. And I finally, on Sunday, observed something. So I was sitting in church and I was listening to the speakers that were giving the sermons, and I had gotten this book from the 1800s that was written. It was like a reproduction book. And as I was listening, I always have to keep my hands occupied when I listen to anything. When I was in college, I'd always have some sort of a craft or a hat that I was working on or something. It would drive my professors crazy, but it's how I could remember things. I had to keep my hands occupied. And so I was sitting in church and I started, the problem with this reproduction book is everything was in Roman numerals. And I don't know how to read Roman numerals. So what I did was I looked up on my phone. I know, don't judge me. Do not judge me about being a bad churchgoer. We're there to be healed. We're sick, there to be healed. Not because we're perfect. Anyway, I'm not perfect. So I sat there, I looked up on my phone how Roman numerals from 1 to 100. And I opened up this book that I had gotten because I wanted to be able to read the Roman numerals because that's how the page numbers were. They were all written in Roman numerals and I couldn't figure out what page was what. And I started copying from my phone into the book. 1 equals, 1, and 2 equals 2 ones, and 3 equals 8. And so I started writing it in Roman numerals in this book. And my 11-year-old looks at me and he said, what are you doing? Right? He whispered in my ear, what are you doing? And I said, I'm writing the Roman numerals from 1 to 100 in this book. And he's like, why are you doing that? And I said, because I can't read the Roman numerals. And he's like, can I do it? I'm like, why do you want to do it? He's like, because I think it's fun, but I don't want to look at the cheat sheet on your phone. Right? So we're sitting here whispering back and forth. My husband's like, shh, shh, because we're being a little bit noisy. We're trying to whisper. Again, don't judge me. So I said, fine. And so he wanted to write the Roman numerals, but he didn't want to write it looking at my phone. And I said, where did you learn Roman numerals? And he was like, from my math curriculum with CTC math. And right now we're using CTC math with the kids. And so, and it's online and it's go at your own pace. And so he's like, I did a lesson on it. I thought it was super fun. I'm like, really? So he goes about, and they're tricky, right? Because you have to know which goes next. And especially as the numbers get bigger and bigger and bigger. But it is kind of fun. So he spends he's listening. He's like, I am listening, Mom. And I'm like, okay, good. So he finishes up and my husband's like, what are you doing? Right. We're having this whole little thing all during church. And And I had this realization as I'm watching him, and I could see the wheels in his head turning, trying to figure out, 57 and 72 and the different numbers as he's writing them in there. And I realized that he needs a challenge, and I'm not challenging him enough. And I realized with we do reading, writing, math, and then we'll do history and civics once a week. And then he has an enrichment program where he does STEM stuff. So that takes care of the science piece. But I asked him, I said, Jacob, this is after church when we got home. I said, Jacob, am I challenging you enough in homeschooling? And he said, no. I said, do you want a challenge, Jacob? And he said, yes, I do. Mom, I like to learn, but I like when you're with me to learn. And I said, okay, all right, then I need to start challenging you more. And he doesn't mind, writing narrations, and doesn't mind doing the dictation and copy work, right? He doesn't mind it. But when I asked him, I decided to do one of Julie Bogart's online classes with the kids. It was like 4 weeks. It was really fun. The kids really liked it. It was writing an animal story, and he loved it. We had done that. We talked about alliteration and assonance and literary devices, and he really got into it. He really enjoyed it. So I said, Jacob, how would you feel if I did a bigger writing curriculum, something more substantial with you? And he said, I would love that, actually, Mom. I would love that a lot. I like to learn, but I also like when things are hard, when I can figure things out. And so this week, I picked up a Institute for Excellence in Writing curriculum for him. This happened last Sunday, so I was able to get that and some other things. And he said, Mom, I love board games. I love strategy board games. And he's actually very, very good at strategy board games. And I've got some really cool strategy board games that teach some really cool concepts like the Electoral College, things like that. And so I realized I have to make a shift for him because what we were doing with him was not working. My daughter said the same thing. She said, Mom, I'm ready to be challenged more. I've got all my books that I'm reading. That's really the basis of her curriculum. Is we have roughly 24 books that she needs to read. However, she's reset that goal and said, no, by the end of this year, I want to read 100 books. And I want them to be a combination of fiction, classics, contemporary fiction, as well as biographies and autobiographies and historical fiction. And so it was funny. We watched Little Women, the newer one that just came out a couple of years ago. And so we watched that, the one with Timothy Chalamet. I can't remember. I don't know how to say his name. Anyway, he played Wonka. That just came out. So we watched that version. She loved it. And then she went to the bookshelf and took down all of the Little Women books and she's been working on writing a spin-off of fiction of a fantasy book that she's been reading, The Keeper of Lost City. She's been reading that series. I've been reading that with her. And so she's been working on that, but she's like, no, I want to delve more in the classics. And she had this realization the last couple of days that she really wants to delve more into the classics. And she's also realized that she wants some more vigorous, intense things. And she wants me to come up with some of those ideas for her. And so again, I've realized, okay, it's time to make a shift. Now, my 8-year-old, she's doing great right where she's at. And it's just right where she needs to be. But I have to make a shift with the kids because what we're doing right now is not enough and it's not working. Now I talked to a mom just a couple of weeks ago who said the same thing. She said, I feel like my daughters are ready for more. They're teenage girls and they're ready for more. And we realized this one has some sight problems, with her eyes and may have some learning disabilities, but she needs something different. And so this mom said, I prayed about things and this is where the direction I feel like we need to go. And so this mom made a shift. And that's what we have to do. If something isn't working, we make a change. And then we need to hold ourselves accountable for following through with that change. So for some of you, especially those of you who are doing the bare minimum and at the same time you're trying to deschool, doing an hour of math, again, if you're deschooling, you shouldn't be doing an hour of math. Just saying, right? You should be doing a lot less than that. But if the math that you chose as a curriculum isn't working, I give you permission to change it. Unlike the public school system, where if something's not working, too bad, so sad. That's the curriculum that was chosen by the textbook committee. By the way, I've been on those before. And that's the curriculum you have to use, and you just plug away, even though half the kids are failing and it's not working. You don't have a choice. It's different when you homeschool. If things don't work, you get to shift. You get to change. And for some of us, that's really hard because we don't want to be, quote, quitters. But the reality is, if it's not working, then you fix it. You do something different. And I had to let go of, but I paid so much for this curriculum. Doesn't matter. I had to let go of that thought and go, okay, it's not working. So I'm going to have to make a change. I don't have to fit my child in this box. The curriculum should be working for us if we're using a curriculum, not the other way around, right? It is meant to be a tool, not the end all be all. So if you have a math curriculum and your child is crying every day, then maybe you take a break from math for a little bit, or maybe you switch curriculums, or maybe you rewind and find out where is it. Usually the frustration comes because the child doesn't understand what's going on. And rather than being able to verbalize that, sometimes kids just shut down and they start to act out and they start to do these different things because the frustration is coming from the not understanding, or they don't understand the way it's being explained. We had a math curriculum like that where, again, Jacob, my 11-year-old, very intensely good at math, right? He is doing geometry now. That's where we are. He's in geometry as an 11-year-old. And he understands it. But back when we first started homeschooling, back when I first pulled him, I did a paper book when we'd watch these videos together, and then I'd do a paper, I'd sit with him and read the curriculum, and we'd do it all. And towards the end, he started getting really frustrated. And I had this realization that he wasn't understanding the way that they were explaining it. So we had to figure out a different way for him to understand, because the way that curriculum was explaining it didn't make sense to his brain. It made sense to my brain, but it didn't make sense in his world. So we watched YouTube videos and we looked at Khan Academy and we, all the different things. And we ended up not finishing the last 3 chapters of that curriculum because he got to the point where he's like, I don't even want to do it. I'm too frustrated. He got to the point he didn't like the way they were explaining it. And I was like, we can't shift curriculums. We have to finish. We have to finish. But the reality is finishing the goal, or is the process of learning math the goal? And if he's not learning the math, then we need to change the process. And it's okay. And it's hard and it's obnoxious. But you can, because you homeschool. Same with reading. If you're in the middle of a read aloud and the kids are bored by it, and frankly, you're bored by it, then stop. You don't have to finish the book. There is no rule in this world that says you have to finish the boring book. And if you're bored by it, your kids are probably bored by it too. And it's okay. Or if they're struggling with reading, you can slow things down, and maybe you take a break for a couple days. Maybe you take a break from having them read for a couple weeks if they're little and they're frustrated and they're crying and it's hard, and you take a break and let them mentally regroup, and then you come back to it. Or maybe you switch to a different curriculum, or maybe you stop using a curriculum, right? rather than having your first instinct be, oh, I should just shove them back into the public school system where they're going to be put in a box again, you get to tailor and meet their needs, which we've talked about before. Like, we've got to meet people where they are. We've got to meet the kids where they are. And sometimes that means we're going to have to adjust. And if it's not working, then we're going to have to shift things. Maybe it's that you need more time outside, or your kids need more time outside. Maybe the socializing piece isn't working, and you haven't found a co-op that you like, and it's not working, and your kids are frustrated. And maybe the answer is you have to create something yourself, and you seek out friends, and you have to create a co-op. My second year into homeschooling, we joined a co-op in Denver, and we went for a year. And towards the end of the year, some things happened, and it stopped. It wasn't working for us anymore. We finished out the year because there wasn't that long left. But I really loved the ideology. That it was Thomas Jefferson education. I loved the ideology. And so I realized in my city, we didn't have that class. And so a friend of mine got together. She was certified with the Thomas Jefferson education philosophy to teach this one particular class. So we found a whole bunch of families, and we had to create our own class. And we did that for a year until it was time to make a shift again. Right. And so if things aren't working, you will have to take the initiative as the parent to help change it, or to just change it until it does work. And guess what? That's okay. It's okay for you to do that. I give permission for you to do that. It's so funny because I've had people legitimately say, I guess I just need permission. I guess I just need to hear permission that I can make a shift. Yes, we all went through the public school system, or 99.9% of us went through the public school system. And we are used to authorities telling us what to do. So if that's what you need, I give you permission. Not that you need it, because you don't. But that's the beauty of homeschooling, is that if something doesn't work, you can make a change. If you notice that your child with ADHD or other or learning disabilities or whatever, they're needing to move more, then get them outside, right? You get to change things. Again, if things aren't working, change them. And sometimes, again, it might be that you stop, you take a break, and you allow yourself a few days or a couple weeks to regroup and figure out what's the next best thing. Maybe spend time at the library, or you spend some time reading and studying yourself to figure out, well, what would fit my child a little bit better than what we were doing. Maybe it's a change in curriculum. Maybe it's not doing a curriculum at all. Maybe it's taking a break from that subject. It all depends on what the needs of your family. It all depends on your needs, right? And the needs of your children. And as a homeschool parent, you get to pick. And that's the beautiful blessing of homeschooling. You can meet your kids where they are. And if something's not working, you can change it. Period. The end. So that's what we're having to do with our little family. I'm having to make a change with Jacob. We're starting a writing program, and he is excited about it. He's mostly excited about it. He doesn't say a lot, but but he did tell me, he said, no, I want a challenge. I love to be challenged. And he's a smart kid, right? Naturally, he picks things up really quick. He always beats me in strategy games, which is really sad because I'm actually really good at strategy games, and he keeps winning. And the other thing he said is he wants more of me. He doesn't want to learn as much on his own. He wants me to be with him. Whereas I've given him a lot of latitude to do things on his own. He said, no, I want you working with me more. I really loved writing the animal story with you. I really love doing those things. I love when we cuddle up and read, our Tuttle Twins books. And I love when we cuddle up and we read the different stories. That's my favorite thing. I love when we listen to audiobooks in the car and we talk about those things. And I want you to give me harder stuff, but I want you to be with me. And so I've had to, as a mom, figure out, okay, so how, what am I going to do to rearrange my time so that I can spend more time with him and more necessary time with him? And at the same time, fulfill all the other responsibilities and things that I'm doing, like cleaning out my basement, which right now looks like a hoarder. Oh, I'm almost done. We're almost there, right? But I have to shift and adjust to make more time for him because he needs it. That's what he needs. It was broken, and now it's time to fix it. He's not broken. Our system and our process was broken. What he was doing was broken. And so now it's time to fix it. So with that, my friends, today's a little bit shorter. I understand, but that's what's been on my mind and on my heart. You don't have to jump right back into the public school system. It's a mess. The whole thing is a mess. And your kids are learning more with you than they are memorizing facts that they're going to forget after the test is done anyway. So that you know. You got this. You're doing better than you think you are. Make adjustments as you need to. Give them harder stuff if they need it. Pull back if they don't. Switch curriculums if that's not if what you're doing is not worth it. If they're ready for more, give them more. Meet them where they are. Again, I'm going over this again. Fix it if it's broken, and you can because you homeschool. With that, I'm excited for next week. We've got a fun interview with some road schoolers who've been doing it for 7 years. They've been on the road. Their kids are now teenagers. That's next week. We got some fun things coming up. I'm excited. My friends, I pray for you. You're doing better than you think you are. God has got you in the hollow of his hands, and he's got your kids in the hollow of his hands. We'll talk next week. You got this, mamas and papas.